This is the recording for the Algebra Regents exam, August 2023, short response. In question number 25, this is a 2-credit short response question. Classify the expression as either rational or irrational and explain your reasoning. You just need to type it right into the calculator. All right. When you type it into the calculator, be very, very careful how you type things in. All right. If you go to type it in all at once, instead of doing the two fractions separately, like I did, be very careful. You need parentheses around the fractions if you type them in all at once. So be very, very careful when you do that. Even if you change the radical 144 into 12 and radical 169 into 13, and you go to type it into a fraction like this, always be safe and type it in with parentheses around the fractions. When you do that, you should get 4.5 if you typed it in correctly. 4.5 is a terminating decimal. Therefore, it is rational. Now, you got to be careful on this question. You can't just say rational and leave it as equals 4.5 and be done. If you don't give an explanation, you do not get that second credit. Now, as an explanation for the second credit, you need to say that it is a terminating decimal, or it's a decimal that ends or stops. Or they also accepted because this is a fraction, it's rational. Because this is a fraction, it's rational. So if you add together a rational plus a rational, you will always get a rational number. In question number 26, this one takes a little bit of work, all right? You have to fill out the whole entire two-way table. You have to take it step by step. Julia surveyed 150 of her classmates. Of the 150 students, 46% were male. So right away, you know that in this bottom right-hand corner, that is the total number of kids surveyed. 46% were male. So 150 times 46%, when you multiply by 46%, you're really moving the decimal point over two places. So that's really 0.46 equals, when you multiply those together, equals 69. Right away, I know from there that I can find this 81. 150 minus 69 gives me 81. So now I have those three numbers. 42 students said that their favorite animal was a horse. So in the horse column, we have 42 as our total. 1/3 of those were female. So you can see my work down here, 42 times 1/3. Again, be careful when you put this inside the calculator. I would put it inside parentheses. 42 times 1/3 is 14. So that's where I'm getting this number from. 42 minus 14 gives me 28. That's where I'm getting this number from. Of the 60 students who said that dolphins were their favorite animal, 60 students for total dolphins, 30% were male. So again, 60 times 30% or times 0.30 equals 18. 60 minus 18 gives me 42. Now that I have all of those, now I can use all that information to find the penguins. It doesn't say anything about the penguins, but we can use the other data in the table to figure it out. Your total, I'm going to do 69 minus 28 horses minus 18 dolphins. That's going to give me 23 penguins. 81 total females minus the 14 minus the 42 gives me 25 penguins. 150 minus 42 minus 60 gives me 48. In question number 27, Brian said that the piecewise function graph below has a domain. Domain are your x values. Domain comes before range, just like x comes before y, of all real numbers. State two reasons, not just one reason, two reasons why Brian is incorrect. So it's telling you that it's incorrect. You need to give two reasons why he's incorrect. Well, one of the reasons is that if you see these open dots right here, an open dot at 3, an open dot at 3. These two open dots mean that there's no value at 3. All right, so it doesn't include the actual number 3 at all. The second reason why he's incorrect, that it's all real numbers going negative infinity to positive infinity. Notice right here, there is nothing after the 4. It ends at 4. If it had an arrow going to the right here, then it would include all real numbers. But because it stops at the 4, because there's a closed dot and no arrow, it is not all real numbers. So you needed both reasons there. In question number 28, the formula given is used to calculate the distance d covered by an object. Solve the formula v sub f, the final velocity, in terms of all that other stuff. So when it says solve for v sub f, we want v sub f equals. So I just rewrote the formula. And the first thing that I want to do, I'm trying to get this v sub f all by itself. In order to do that, I need to get rid of this times t at the beginning. So I did divided by t and divided by t. So d divided by t is just d divided by t. The next thing that I want to do is get rid of the divided by 2. I get rid of the divided by 2 by doing times 2 and times 2. That's really 2 over 1. So that's why the 2 goes with the d down here. So 2d divided by t equals vi plus vf. I want to get rid of the vi because I want to get this vf, v sub f, all by itself. So minus vi minus vi. It's that whole thing minus vi equals vf. In question number 29, we want to solve for all values of x. So there's 3 different ways that you could do this. You could solve by factoring, doing reverse FOIL, drawing your line down the middle, setting both sides equal to 0 and solving. You could use the quadratic formula, or you could do completing the square. I didn't show completing the square because I highly doubt most people will do it that way, but you could if you wanted to. So anyway, either way that you do it, solving by factoring or using the quadratic formula, we need to make sure that it is set equal to 0 first. So no matter what, your first step is going to be the same here. It's going to be this minus 36 and minus 36 because we want to get it set equal to 0. If you solve by factoring, what times what is negative 36? That adds up to negative 9. It's negative 12 and positive 3. Negative 12 times 3 is negative 36. Negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9. Draw your line down the middle, set both sides equal to 0, and solve. Plus 12, minus 3, we get 12 and negative 3. If you chose to use the quadratic formula, we're going to put this into the quadratic formula. So my A value is 1, my B value is negative 9, my C value is negative 36. So when you plug those numbers in, be very careful. You have the negative of negative 9 because it's negative B, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now be very careful here. Remember, if it's a negative number there, you have to put it inside parentheses when you type it into the calculator. Negative 9 squared. If you don't use the parentheses, you'll get the wrong answer every time. Negative 9 squared is negative 9 times negative 9, which is positive 81. Minus 4 times A times C, that's really 144, over 2 times A, 2. I add together my 81 and 144 to be 225. 225 is a perfect square. It's just 15. So 9 plus or minus 15 all over 2. Split it. 9 plus 15, 9 minus 15 all over 2. If you go to type this whole thing into the calculator all at once, instead of doing the numerator separately, you have to put it inside parentheses. Look at those purple parentheses. Otherwise, it's 24 divided by 2, which is 12, negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3, the same thing we got there. In question number 30, determine the common difference. The common difference in an arithmetic sequence is what you're adding or subtracting by each time. They tell you that a sub 1 is 5, so that's your first term, and a sub 1 is 5, and a sub 5 is 17. So you got to figure out what you have to add by to get from 5 to 17. You have 3 different terms in the middle of it. Well, I figured out that I'm going to add by 3, add by 3, add by 3, add by 3 to get from the first term to that 5th term. So that means my common difference is 3. That gets you 1 point. Now determine the 21st term. You just figured out that you're adding by 3 each time. So just keep on adding by 3, adding by 3, adding by 3, adding by 3. Eventually you get to 65 as the 21st term. In question number 31, what you want to do is you want to factor completely. Anytime that you have this question on the Regents exam, it seems like you always have to factor out the greatest common factor. So that's what we want to do again on this one. 2 goes in evenly to 18 and 2, so I can factor out a 2. Now, sometimes they have you factor out an x as well, but this term doesn't have an x, so I can't do that. So all that I'm doing is factoring out the 2. 2 times, looking at the distributive property, 2 times 9x squared gives me 18x squared. 2 times -1 gives me -2. So now this is the difference of two perfect squares. This is 3x plus 1, 3x minus 1. Or if you wanted to do reverse FOIL, what times what is -1? That adds up to 0, but we have that a value of 9. So that has to be like a 3x and a 3x or a 9x and a 1x. It's easier just to recognize that that's the difference of two perfect squares. Don't forget to bring down your GCF at the beginning, and your final answer is that whole thing. In question number 32, solve that quadratic for all values of x. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. The nearest hundredth is 2 decimal places. I think it's easiest, again, to use the quadratic formula. So my a value is 1, my b value is 3, my c value is -9. Plug those numbers into the quadratic formula. You end up with 9 plus 36 here, which is 45. Split it. -3 plus 45 all over 2, -3 minus 45 all over 2. If you're going to type this all into the calculator all at once, make sure that you have parentheses around the numerator. You get a big, long, ugly decimal. That rounds to 1.85. Big, long, ugly decimal rounds to -4.85. Remember, it said round to the nearest hundredth. In question number 33, we have our first 4 credit question. The senior class at Hills High School is purchasing sports drinks and bottled water. A case of sports drinks costs $15.79. Bottled water costs $5.69. The senior class had $125 to spend on drinks. They specifically tell you in the next part you have to use X for sports drinks and Y for bottled water. If you don't use those 2 letters, the most that you can get is 3 out of 4. So be very careful there. $15.79 times a case of sports drinks, $5.69 times a case of water, and they only have $125 to spend. They could spend less than the 125, but they could also spend equal to the 125. They can't spend more. They only have 125. So less than or equal to 125. 9 cases of bottled water were purchased. So what I did was I plugged in my 9 in for my Y for the bottled water. So now I'm going to solve that equation. So 569 times 9 is 5121. Now it's just a 2-step inequality. Minus 5121 from both sides. Divide by 1579. And you get 4.67 blah, 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 blah. X is less than 4.67 blah, 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 blah. Use your inequality to determine algebraically the maximum number of full cases. You can't go to the store and rip open a case of water and only get a partial case. You can't get 0.67 of a case. So she doesn't have enough to buy the 5th case of water. So she can buy 4, not buy water, but sports drinks. And she doesn't have enough for 5 cases of sports drinks, but she does for 4. So she'll have the 9 cases of water. She'll have the 4 things of sports drink, but then she'll have a little tiny bit leftover money. So she can buy 4 full cases, but she doesn't have enough for a 5th. In question number 34, another 4 credit question. The path of a rocket is modeled by that equation. Sketch the graph on the axes below. So all that you're going to do, h of t is just y equals. So type it into your y equals, second in table for your points. Here's a rundown of what the points are. And I graph those points. No arrows on the end. The rocket can't go underground. The rocket can't go underground. This is the ground right there at the x-axis. So connect the dots, and that's our graph. State the vertex. The vertex is the min or the max. Well, this happens to be the max, and that max point is right here, 5, comma 122.5. You could double check that on your calculator, stat calc, and then the max. All right. Second calc, and then the max. Click on the left-hand side, click on the right-hand side, and then it'll tell you what that point is. But you can tell that it's just right there as well. That's the highest point. Explain what the vertex means in the context of this situation. Well, in the context of the situation, they want to know in terms of the word problem, what do those numbers represent? 5 is the number of seconds. So at 5 seconds, the rocket is at its highest point in the air. All right, that highest point in the air is 122.5 feet. By the way, take a look at my y-axis. I think it's very helpful to write in all these other numbers. It makes it way easier to graph. In question number 35, write the linear regression equation for this data. So L1, L2, stat edit, L1, L2, stat calc, number 4 for linear regression. So linear regression equations have to have a y equals. If you did not put the y equals, you do not get full credit. 0.41 is your A value. Negative 2.31 is your B value. So y equals 0.41x minus 2.31. State to the nearest hundredth, so 2 decimal places, the correlation coefficient. Well, if you forgot to turn on your stat diagnostics, you have to go back to your mode button, turn on your stat diagnostics, and then do stat calc number 4 again. When you do that, now your R value will appear. Rounded to the nearest hundredth is 0.99. State what this correlation coefficient indicates about the linear fit of the data. Anything that's close to 1 or -1 is a strong correlation. This is a positive 0.99, so it would be a strong positive correlation. And that means that it's a good fit for the data. You have to say strong positive correlation. 2 credits for the equation, and then 1 for your R value and 1 for strong positive correlation. In question number 36, very straightforward question here. We have to graph the system of inequalities, label the solution set with an S, that's the double shaded area, and then talk about one of the points. So looking at this first equation, I can see that it's not in your y equals mx plus b form. In order to get the y all by itself, I need to divide by -2, divide by -2, divide by -2. Because you're dividing by a negative, you have to flip the sign. This less than or equal to symbol. Oh, sorry, this less than symbol becomes a greater than symbol. Sorry, I was looking at the symbol down below it. Less than becomes greater than. We have to flip the sign because you're dividing by a negative. So this becomes y is greater than -3 over 2x. You could change that to be -1.5 if you want to, minus 6. Hit second and table for the points. So we get this dotted line right here. Make sure that your line is dotted. Make sure that you put arrows on the ends, very important. Make sure that you label your line, very important. It's greater than, so we're shading above the line. The second equation is a little bit tricky. X is greater than or equal to -3. When you have an X equals a number equation, remember hazy, vixen. Hazy is the H stands for horizontal. That is a side to side, left to right line, and that's Y equals. Vixen, vertical, is an X equals a number equation. Your calculator will not help you graph this equation. So X is equals -3. -3, X equals -3 right here. On your X axis, it equals -3. And then we draw a vertical line right there. Because of the or equal to, it is a solid line. Put arrows on the ends and label it. We want all the numbers, which way to shade? We want all the numbers that are greater than or equal to -3. Well, all the numbers that are greater than are on this side of it, to the right of that vertical line, because numbers like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 are bigger than -3. If it said less than, we would have shaded on the left-hand side. So now make sure you have your arrows and your label. Now that we have that, label the solution set. I can't tell you how many people forget to label the solution set. That is the double shaded area. You just need a big old S right in the double shaded area. Allison thinks that 2, -9 is a solution. Well, this is the point 2, -9 over to 2, down to -9. Is that point a solution to the system? No, it is not. It's in the shaded area for the vertical line, but because it's on the solid line, on the dotted line of the slanted line there, because it's on the dotted line, it is not included in the solution set. Notice that it did say justify your answer, so you need a reason. All right, no, because it's on the dotted line, and dotted lines are not included in the solution set. You have to justify your answer, not just saying no. How would you grade this? 1 credit for each of the lines, 1 credit for your solution, 1 credit for all this down here in the orange. If you only said no, you can't get 4 out of 4. You have to give a reason. No, it's on a dotted line. And finally, our 6-point question. This is a long one. Lydia wants to take art classes. She compares the cost at 2 different art centers. Center A charges $25 an hour plus a registration fee of $25. Notice that I have that right here. A equals 25x $25 per hour plus the fee of 25. Center B charges $15 an hour, so $15 times the number of hours, plus a registration fee of 75. Notice the X right here. It's X number of hours, so you had to have X right there. This is what A equals. This is what B equals, A and B. 1 point for each of those. If Lydia wants to take 10 hours of classes, use your equation to determine which center will cost less. Well, all you have to do is sub in a 10 in for the X for the number of hours in both equations. So we sub in a 10 here for X. We sub in a 10 here for X. We get that A costs $275, B costs $225. Be careful, you have to answer the question then. It's not just saying how much is each one. Be very careful. It asks you which center will cost less. You have to say B costs less. 1 credit and 1 credit. The final part, all right, the final part is graphing it. All right, you have to graph those equations. So stick a y equals in front of it. So y equals 25x plus 25, y equals 15x plus 75, second and table for your points. No arrows on the left-hand side because we can't go into the negative, but it can keep on going to the right. So arrow and arrow there. State the number of hours of classes where they will cost the same. They're looking for the intersection point. If we go straight down from there, we get to hour number 5. So hopefully you did well on it. Raw score of 26 to get a 65.